Well, welcome everybody. My name is Alicia Crank. I'm the executive director of Seattle CityClub. I've gotten year 1 under my belt. Woohoo! Thank you so much for being here. I know this has been a tough week for a lot of folks. I know COVID's going around again. People are getting sick. I'm about to be one of those people shortly. So got a lot of different messages today from people with their regrets because they weren't feeling well. So I am grateful that you are here today, and that's why I've also loved that we record our programming so that we can still be able to share it out and get the message across on what we're doing and how we do it, and just the great work that we've been able to do in the greater Seattle region. So before I bring on our featured speaker for today for our fireside chat, I am going to ask Jill Jackson, our board chair, to say a few words.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming tonight, especially when the weather is so bad. Honestly, I know we're going to have a great conversation. It's already been a great time connecting with many of you, so I'm very happy that we're all here. As Alicia said, I'm Jill Jackson. I'm the chair of our board right now. And I'm very excited to kick off this second ReEngage at the Collective here in Seattle with Jonathan Sposato, who honestly, as a former journalist, I'm super excited to hear from. And you wear so many hats, do so many things. It's going to be great to hear from you. So thank you for being here. For those of you who may not know Seattle City Club and our history, it was started 40 years ago by 9 women. And since then, we have worked to fulfill our mission, which is to create a healthy civic dialogue in our region. Our board, we meet, we discuss, we talk about some of the issues that are most important to our region. We try to bring new members in, like Kim Beckland over there, who's just joined our board, and create a very big tent of people who come with all kinds of different backgrounds and perspectives so that we can help foster that dialogue and have conversations like we're going to have tonight. Alicia is very modest, but she, over this past year, has really transformed Seattle City Club in some really positive ways, bringing new programming, changing many things in ways that are very exciting, bringing new people into our events. Honestly, we've had some great success with our civic cocktails. We're about to have a bunch of city debates. This all costs money, and it's a very small, mighty staff. So we have to, every once in a while, hold these fundraisers and bring people like you in to help support the work that we do and make these events and this dialogue possible. So thank you, Alicia. I'm very excited, and I'm going to pass the microphone back over to you.
Thank you. So before we begin, if we're going to give lots of thanks, I appreciate that because, sometimes you do the work and you're like, does anyone even know what's happening? But if I look good, it's really because I have 2 people in this room that help me look good. One is my colleague, Jeff Carter. Jeff makes sure that the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, things are bolded and underlined. So thank you for keeping us on schedule and logistically sound. And then also I have so many Andrews, but Andrew Hugge, who though there is our marketing person. So again, without our small but mighty team and plus our board of directors and supporters like you, this work, which is work, seems a little more fun because we get to hang out and do stuff like this. So with that, I am really excited about our conversation this evening. As you might know, we brought back our in-person fundraisers this year, and we wanted to do something smaller, a bit more intimate than the 300-person big round table thing, because I think when we try to engage and learn how to re-engage, that we need smaller groups. We need to be able to feel like I came to see the person that's going to talk, and I can actually talk to them afterwards. So that's what we're doing. We did that last month with Rick Steves, and today we're going to do that with the multi-hyphenated Jonathan Sposato. So please give him a hand as we head to the stage. So hi, everyone. Welcome to our second ReEngage event. I am Alicia Crank, the Executive Director of Seattle City Club, and I am happy to be having this fireside chat plus Q&A with the multi-hyphenated tech entrepreneur, publisher, all the things, Jonathan Sposato. How are you, my friend?
I'm really good. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for asking me to take the stage. You know, I have a tough act to follow following you. And I know the last one I came to of this, it was Bruce Harrell.
Yes.
So I'm bringing my A game,
Okay.
Alicia.
Bring the A game
I'm
for
here with my
Alicia.
A game. A+ game.
Thank you. So before we jump into the questions, I always like to have our guests kind of self-introduce, only because I know I'm going to miss something, especially if you're always working on something that I don't know about yet. So if this is your time to tell people what you're up to right now.
Yeah. I'm happy to talk about my newest project. It's called Joy Sauce, joysauce.com. It's a website with a lot of great shows, video shows, podcasts, incisive written editorial, all centered on what I call the American Asian experience. I don't say Asian American, I say American Asian to just change the emphasis a little bit, to shift the center of gravity. So what that means is that it's all this kind of interesting content, really edgy and kind of a little bit more youthful and playful, that speaks to someone like myself, because I can't really relate to, say, a Korean soap opera that's been imported, or like a goofy Japanese game show, which is wonderful, but I'm an American, and I'm an American Asian, and so this is content created for and by folks like myself, and I'm happy to report that in the new year, I can't get into the details just yet, so you have to keep it just to this group and people watching the video, but sometime next year, it will launch as, I think, a historic first ever all Asian American TV channel.
Wow.
So that's
Cool.
why I'm like really busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to look out for that. See, that's the one thing about hanging out with us as well, is that you get like the first scoop on things that are coming down.
First scoop right there.
First scoop. So,
And there are magazines to print, so
yes.
we're working hard.
So, the overarching theme for all of our ReEngages is about the importance of civic engagement and civil discourse, especially in an election year, because there's some major local elections happening around here. And so we did one with that theme, but we talked about kind of travel and what people are seeing in other countries, what democracy looks like in other parts of the world. And for this one, it was more of, especially being here in downtown Seattle and South Lake Union, there's a lot of, entrepreneurs and those who work for tech companies. And as someone who spent 18 years in Silicon Valley, I worked around a lot of tech people. And
I'm so sorry.
No, I learned a lot. I learned how to code. I lived at Fry's Electronics.
We're hiring.
Okay. And, but because their schedules were either so crazy or that was just their own focus, there wasn't that natural trajectory of seeing those that worked in that industry doing things in the civic space. And so, but I think that's changing now. And I look at someone like you, who I feel like is the anomaly in the sense of moving out of, still in tech, but kind of going from there to doing a lot of more community things like the magazine publications and founding GeekWire and things like that. How did you find that trajectory? How was that for you?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. And by the way, I underscore and support the overall premise that in the tech segment, there has not been a really robust history of people moving to philanthropy. And you have a few anomalies. And there are really wonderful folks that I've had the honor of working with out in the audience today who understand that problem really well. And so my own personal journey is, and this is why I think it's really important for companies, large or small, to have a really, really strong culture of giving back. And so I have to admit that I, too, was this really young person, literally 30 years ago, at Microsoft, just super focused, nose to the grindstone, working on my project, trying to get ahead in my career and get noticed and have my product be a big hit with millions and millions of customers. And that's all I cared about. And we worked around the clock. And it wasn't until we would get an email from Bill Gates, the CEO, saying, you know what, it would really mean a lot to me if you all participated in the giving campaign. And in particular, there's a great organization that my mother and I, my family, that we've supported for years called the United Way of King County. And here are all the ways that you can support that. And so with some people, they're like, oh, I don't want to be told where to give my money or whatever. But in my case, I was like, Bill was about 100,000 times smarter than me. So he's already thought it through. So I was happy to do that. Now, as part of that giving campaign, so number one, you have to have the leadership, which creates the culture. And then you also have to create these you have to have fun. You have to add the fun. So we would do these sort of volunteer days where we would do all manner of things. And there were so many organizations that plugged in. And I think one year, my entire team and I did something that was, I think, chartered or convened by the United Way, and that was really cool. And another year, we did something, I got my team all rallied up to go do something for the Plymouth Housing Group. Yeah. And when you do start rubbing shoulders with real people who are out there, who are not making tech salaries, who have a whole lot of other sets of concerns than you do as a primarily single person with not a care in the world, it really changes you. I'm sorry to say that was not super, super consistent, but once a year is better than nothing. Now, the reality is that I do think that the tech segment in general can do a lot better, even to this day, and I'm happy to do what it takes to activate and energize that group.
So how did you move from, maybe it wasn't even a movement, but, okay, so space and tech, doing what you're doing there,
yeah.
And then angel investor.
Well, angel investing comes from, I think, a bit of laziness, really, in terms of like, well, that's the next thing that you do, right? So you have a couple of exits, and you make a couple of bucks if you're lucky, and I'm the first to say, absolutely, I've been more lucky than good. I almost feel like that there's almost no. There's a lot of chaos in the system that determines who makes it and who doesn't, right? So more lucky than good. But the cliche thing is, after you've made a couple of bucks, that you do want to have a way of multiplying your resources and like, oh, I know tech and I'm really good in the consumer SaaS space, so I get that. Or I'm really great in the enterprise space, so I understand how to coach another entrepreneur to do that. So that's how you get into angel investing. Now, in my case, I did focus the vast majority of my angel investing in 2017 on solely female-founded companies. Because I wanted to, I just didn't think it was, I saw too many entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs in my pipeline that were really frustrated, like they couldn't get funding. And I'm like, you're literally 3 times smarter than this other guy. Your concept is amazing. There's something going on. And I felt that as someone who was not, as an Asian American male, I was not always seen the way that I felt that I should be seen, and growing up, I'm talking about, and maybe even to this day. But so I could understand what the problems that some of the female entrepreneurs are. So then I focused all of my angel investing on female. With the rule, you have to have a female co-founder, because I believe that it's not hard. If you're going to have a co-founder, whether it's a technical co-founder or a marketing co-founder, it's just as easy to find a female co-founder as it is a male one. So go do that. Yeah.
That's the sound bite for today. That's that. So were there any ones that you were an angel investor to that were your favorites? Any of them that
I can't name a favorite, but I would say there are a lot that are. I like Glam Hive because, to be honest, that one kind of continues to pay me back, so to speak. Right. So here's the beautiful thing about being an angel investor, or even if you're not angel investing, but you're on the advisory boards of different companies, is that if you are delivering value to them, people if they're good people, they're going to want to deliver value back to you.
Yeah.
in some way down the line. Maybe it's not the next day, but maybe it's in a couple of years. And I'm not in it to think that everyone's going to scratch my back later, but that's what naturally happens.
Yeah.
Just like I'm scratching your back now. You
Yeah.
know, you deliver so much value in the community. I'm like, oh, that's a heck yes if you ask me to, you know, take your stage. So in terms of like a company like Glam Hive, which is a styling platform where they've democratized the same level of super high-end celebrity styling. Like if you're like Keanu Reeves and you have like a team of like these celebrity stylists who like make sure you look, the hair is perfectly at this length and cut, you know, styled, and you know, if you're those guys, Brad Pitt, what have you, you have access to the very top stylists. And so what Glam Hive has done is created a platform where you and I can just hire that celebrity stylist and, you know, get the same deal. And it's great. It's a win-win for everybody. So I like that one. And that's just one example. But companies like that I've invested in, they kind of pay you back because maybe in the course of launching Joy Sauce, I have a need to talk to my Asian brother Keanu, right?
Yeah. And I'm happy to be the valet for you when you have that meeting
Is that right? Okay.
with him.
Yeah.
Just saying.
All right. You got it.
I'm here for you.
Okay.
And I think one of the other stereotypes about those in tech, whether it's men or women, but mostly men, from what my understanding was, is that they don't also tend to like to be at the front of the room or holding the microphone, if you will. They're used to just kind of being in their cubicles, you know, doing their work.
Yes.
But then,
I see what,
but
I
then
get
here's
your point.
you are again, and I feel like everything that you've been doing has put you kind of in front of people.
I see.
Is that something that's inherent for you? Is that something that you had to learn to be able to do? Because to be able to do stuff like Joy Sauce and being a publisher of several magazines,
Yep.
it's like there is no hiding in the back room.
No, there isn't. And the short answer is I think those things for anybody, they tend to be inherent.
Yeah.
Or it's really hard to change. Now, having said that, I've met a lot of people where they're amazing on stage, super charismatic, persuasive, or great performers, and they get off stage and they tell you, like, I'm totally an introvert. I don't like doing this. This is a job. And so I'm not that. For me, I enjoy it. I think the more evolved thing that I've learned is that you have to be really selective on those things. So the first order, when you're like a new budding entrepreneur and you're getting some traction. In fact, I was talking to probably somebody else you know who offices out of here, who's a great young CEO, and she was really struggling with how she's allocating her time.
Yeah.
She's on the cover of magazines. She's getting asked to speak on stage, and I remember when that was first happening. So when I was at Microsoft, I got to take the stage a lot because there were very few people out of the technical product groups who were relatively decent at communicating to, so I got tapped for that a lot. But after Microsoft, when I was a budding entrepreneur, I was lucky enough to have some success with one of my startups that ended up having, millions and millions of users, 60 million users a month. And that was when things were happening and the asks were constant. They never stopped. And if you aren't careful, it's that Warren Buffett saying, the difference between good people and great people is that the great people know how to say no. So that's something that really sticks with me. The great people know how to say no. They're really good at saying no. And so you have to learn how to do that. And so that's the challenge to this day for me is it's easy and natural to be out in public, but you gotta be very selective.
That's the second.
Like say yes to Seattle City.
To me,
You.
Let's talk about something you just hit on this about being here inside the collective, right, and the type of people that tend to be here. And I know that I've met so many people just coming here a couple of days a week working, including you, getting to know you better. And one of the things that I've seen has been kind of the foundation constant for a lot of the folks that come here is that they're either an entrepreneur, they're coming back into the workforce or something. Yeah. But they also, whether they've lived here 2 years or 10 years, have not figured out a way to get civically engaged. And so they started to learn it from us because we were here, thank goodness. Yep. But that Seattle freeze is real. What advice do you have for people, whether they come from here or somewhere else, to go, what is that first step for them to learn how to become more civically engaged? What should that look like?
Well, I think, number one, you have to walk the earth. You can't go home and watch Netflix for 4 hours. You can't just go to work and be this sort of low-dimensional person. So I do think getting out there, having all the different atoms collide into interesting molecules and compounds, that's what happens here. And I think it's a big question mark. What's going to happen, what's continuing to happen in our city in terms of natural safe spaces for those things to happen, more of those spaces. But that's one of the main reasons why I decided to buy Seattle Magazine and Seattle Business Magazine, and to use those as a platform to change the conversation, to also engage people civically in the things. We did an entire issue. I love doing first things. Yeah. You know, the first issue I printed had Carmen Best on the cover, who was the first African American woman on the cover in the 50-plus year history of the magazine.
Really?
Okay? Yeah.
Wow.
I almost said first African American, but Steve Poole had that honor.
Okay.
Okay. Popular guy, Steve Poole. Like you know, that was like 20 years ago.
Wow.
So, but we did one of the other things that we did that was a first, was the first ever issue, City Magazine issue, that was entirely about philanthropy and how do you get involved. And I told my editorial staff and my editor-in-chief, Rob, you know Rob.
Yeah, I know Rob.
I told him, Rob, pretend like you are I literally said, pretend like you are a 27-year-old person working at Amazon, and you don't know how to get started.
Exactly.
What do you do? What is civic engagement? And so we got a constellation of star experts, including some people out there in the audience, like Erica, John Stanton, the owner of the Mariners, who's been very philanthropic.
Yes.
People like Kathy Smith, people like Mary Snap, and on and on. I'm forgetting. Yeah. And we got the Bombers, you know, Steve and Connie Bomber. You know, we did a whole. So we had these people go on record to talk about, listen, this is how I think about philanthropy, and here's how I suggest that you get started. And each and every single one had the most moving, passionate stories. If that isn't going to get you started, I don't know what will. And so I was very proud to dedicate an entire, you know, I don't know, that issue was probably close to 200 pages to that.
We got to find that issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. As with anything that you do in tech, it's all about trying and ultimately failing until you try again and get to that point. Has there been a civic engagement fail that you tried to do that didn't quite work out, or quite work out the way you were hoping, that you were able to learn from to do something?
Yeah, sure. There have been many failures, and even in some of what I, in my mind, define as a success, maybe there are others who are going, no, that was kind of a fail, Jonathan. I don't know, Erica and Christy, you guys tell me if it, okay, all right. I always feel like it's the old Catholic schoolboy in me going, like, did I do that wrong? I would say that my well-intended, but I didn't realize that the size of the problem was. I created an app called WeCount.
WeCount.
Which hoped to connect, like, you know, you and I, and maybe we've got some surplus. We got a spare sleeping bag, some extra blankets to connect those necessary items with people who are unhoused.
Got it.
And it was a noble effort, but it didn't really scale in the way that I had hoped. And so I learned a lot from doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any audience questions before I continue? Oh, there we go.
Thank you. So my name is Kim. Thank you so much for being here. This is really critical.
I thank you and the board.
Oh, yeah, you bet. So what My question is around kind of how you create a corporate ethos around this, because for many years, Boeing to an extent, and then Microsoft also, were kind of the leaders in kind of setting the bar very high for people giving and creating an ethos around the corporate forces over time. Particularly like if we go back 20, 25 years ago, it was just sort of recognized that these companies are leading the way and they could tap their friends and then others would give. And because now headquarters are moved around the geography of the world, it's a little bit harder to call on those giants of business in the same way. So for those of us who are trying to value capture that here in the greater Seattle area, how do we create sort of that corporate community that people know that when they give from wherever they sit, in this case in the tech community, how do they know that they're contributing? How do we create that ethos again? It used to be easier, I think. Maybe my thesis is wrong, but I'm trying to figure out how do we instill that spirit of giving.
Yeah, I don't think your thesis is wrong. I do think that it's different nowadays. Like, for example, the earlier example I gave about the United Way and Microsoft and the giving campaign, they still do a giving campaign, but I don't think it's as a United Way focused or if at all. And so it has changed. And then I'm not sure, I've never worked at Amazon. I've worked at Microsoft, Google, came close to Apple, but never Amazon. So I don't know what they're like internally, but from the outside, it kind of seems like that they're still very early in the game of developing that ethos. And I should clarify: are you asking from the perspective of an outsider? How do you outside in pull those corporations in, to a level of awareness? Or are you talking about if you're inside of a corporation, how do you create that? Yeah. I don't have. I think there are other people in the audience who are even way smarter experts than me on it. And I'd love to know their perspective. It's all about leadership, and all about finding a champion who can champion you. That's the obvious answer. But I also think that you have to deliver value to them as well. And I wonder if there are ways. How I might go about it is to demonstrate how it boosts morale, how it boosts team cohesion, how it boosts retention, things like that, right? I used to say when I was at Microsoft that the team that plays together stays together. And so I love that, the aforementioned example, going to the Plymouth Housing Group and just fixing apartments and painting. I mean, we had so much fun doing that. And I learned so much about, the guy down the hall that it was really annoying. But like at the end of that afternoon, you're like, he's all right.
Yeah.
He's cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So yeah, making it, relating it back to morale, retention, organizational health. But do other people in the audience,
I see Jill's
Lauren,
hands up.
Erica, Christy, do you have a perspective on this?
See, he's totally going to put you on the spot, so you might as well just go with it. Front row.
I just wanted your take as someone who thinks about these kinds of things from a communications perspective, that a lot of companies, I mean, you look at certain newsletters now and you see sponsored by blah, 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 seeing that like all the good they've done philanthropically as a PR strategy. Yeah. And whether you think that is actually good in terms of spreading the word, or whether you think that actually might be harmful.
So I'll try not to hedge and just kind of net it out. I think it is good. I think it does help, because if you signal those signals, it all depends on the execution. But I'll finish the answer. It is good because I think like attracts like, and I think we are sort of pack animals in a sense, and that when we see somebody doing something good, we're motivated to do the same. And so I love it. I was not kidding when I said that I went to Target, and this outfit was, this jacket was $45, and these pants were, I think, $40. And the reason why I love Target is that they're an incredibly ethical company. I don't know if you know that, but they pay really, really good wages. They try to create things sustainably. All of that, and it's all on their website. And I love that about them, and it made me more, I did not have any cynicism about it. So I would raise my hand to say that I am not someone who is inherently cynical. I'm kind of gullible, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, and then I'm into it, right? So I think it's in the execution. If you can do it sincerely, I don't think it's a bad strategy.
No, go ahead.
I didn't want to cut the line in case somebody else did it.
You're fine.
So I had a question about the world we live in today, where there is like a sea of hashtags, there is the next fad. How do we clear up through that noise and actually become more relevant for the people? And there are lots of people who have great ideas, great intention to help. How do we come above and say that, hey, we are even-handed. We really have the good of the city in our mind. How do we cut the clutter and get up there? Have you had to face some of this before?
Oh, 100%. So I will tell a quick story of the fact that we were in Africa on a vacation, and one of the things that I loved about that trip was oftentimes there was no internet connectivity, and I looked at my phone and social media and didn't even think about hashtags for like almost 2 weeks. And so I also was really moved by how other people across the world are not paying as much attention to those things as we are, as Westerners, as consumers. And I got the sense that, in fact, I observed that they were happier, healthier, well-adjusted, amazing, beautiful people. And so that inspired me. As to the how of it, I do think it begins with having greater conversation and consequently awareness of the very harmful effects of being online all the time. And also understanding what's happening, the greater forces. You know, why do we always feel bad when we are on Twitter and we're reading all this? Well, as it turns out, in a Pew Research study, it's not 33%, it's not 50%, but something like 83% of all tweets on Twitter, or excuse me, X, 83% are negative. Now think about the content you're consuming. If 83% of something, if it's the food, if it's the drink, if 83% of it is bad, why put it in your body, right? And so I feel that way about social media now. And so having more discourse and awareness of the data, and also things like context collapse, where, in fact, frankly, I did not come here to plug Seattle Magazine. But the very next issue of Seattle Magazine, which we were so honored to have you grace your presence with. You know, you contributed a great column, as did Aaron Jones and others. We talk about this. We talk about the toxicity that's around that makes dialogue really difficult. And one of the examples is context collapse. You have no ability to, if you say or do anything on social media, for people to understand who you are first, where you're coming from. Maybe you were born to a single mother, or maybe you were, whatever it is. There's no grace allowed you in terms of the things that you do and say. And so I think that we have to really check ourselves on that stuff. I'm hoping, again, with publications like Seattle Magazine, that we put out these ideas and do so bravely. I may get in trouble with this issue. People may not like what we have to say, and you got to be okay with that. And so hopefully we can have more dialogue about how to cut above the noise, as you say. I hope I've answered your question. Yeah.
Now, and before we get to Terrence, I want to piggyback off of what you just said there, especially about social media, as someone who spends a lot of time on social media. And I think about dialogue and civil discourse, and I was like, you know, you're right, it's 83%. It feels like a lot more than that. And one thing I did a couple of weeks ago, you know, I never usually use the mute function,
Mute
on
function is great.
Twitter. I can't call it X 'cause I don't want to say I'm using X to do something because that just sounds illegal. Um, I was on X, like what? But one of the things I did, I said, you know what? I am going to mute the words Republican, Democrat in both singular and plural.
Smart.
And my blood pressure has been lowest than it's been in a while because I wasn't seeing those tweets all the time, because usually those words will be combined with words like woke or libtard or something like that. And so I was like, wow, to be able to find those filters so that you can continue to use these tools in a positive way. So I'm going to recommend that. It's like if there's certain tweets that you see that you're used to seeing that, sadly triggers you in one way or the other, mute that word. And that is my lesson for today. Terrence had his hand up.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, for being here. Thanks, Alicia, for having this discussion. It's really important and it's really great to see. One thing that I was wondering if you could touch on, Jonathan, is what's your opinion about, I love this conversation that we're having about like interpersonal dialogue and kind of conflict resolution. That's something that's really important to me, peace. At a personal level, what are some things that you do to kind of like support your own like wellness? I feel like wellness is something that has, since over the course of the pandemic, has been centered among many people, particularly when it comes to like work-life balance. You're very successful. You're involved in a lot of different ventures, and I'm sure that causes you to have to be on a lot and be intentional about your time. Could you talk a little bit about some of the things that you do to kind of like support your personal wellness? And then what are your thoughts about how, I guess, more people can do that and more people can tap into that? There's a lot of innovation in this space right now with like the Headspace app and the Calm app and meditation and those types of things. Could you talk a little bit about this?
There are probably 4 or 5 things that I would offer you in terms of how I manage my own personal wellness, and they've really worked for me very nicely, although imperfectly so. The first is I look for glimmers, and so you said the word trigger, right? A glimmer is the opposite of a trigger. A glimmer, instead of something that makes you feel bad, it's like, oh God, I just saw that. Oh, Mike Huckabee said that. Oh, that's and then you feel bad. Cumulatively, it's terrible. A glimmer is the opposite. It can be big or small, but something you see in the world, you're like, that brings me joy. That makes me smile. Alicia, you're a glimmer. Every time I see you, all day and every day. Many of you out there that I've worked with, you're always a glimmer, and I hope that I can deliver that to you as well. It could just literally be you are allowed to have glimmers that are kind of silly and stupid, I was gonna, maybe it's a drink. Maybe you just like the feel of your car when you get into it. I love the feel of my 1979 diesel station wagon. I love it. It reminds me of my childhood. So those are glimmers. So I begin every day practicing, and we're always still practicing, even after a couple of years of this, looking for glimmers every day, right? And then you'll find that you'll just feel better. Number 2. You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. So mind your surroundings and the people that you find yourself with all the time. Not to say that you have to start kicking people out or divorcing people or anything like that, but if you can curate 5 people that you spend the most, and coworkers count, obviously. If you're lucky enough to be able to choose your coworkers, choose wisely and choose people who also similar to you can see glimmers or be glimmers. And trust me, that to me is like 90%. So you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. Do you want people that bring you down or are negative and are toxic and all of that stuff? Yeah. I will say, and I'm kind of hardcore, I routinely kick people out of my companies that are toxic. They could be, I don't care if you're the best CFO, I don't care if you're, a Harvard grad or or you learn computer science at MIT, but if you're a toxic person and you're not fun to work with, I'll give you a warning or two, but you're not going to last long. So I think that's another one. A third one is more mechanistic or and easy, which is I do think physical and mental are really linked. I've always believed that, and I'm always really grateful to my adopted Italian-American father who taught a certain sort of fresh off the boat Chinese kid how to play basketball, how to play football, run track, things like that. And I've never stopped being a runner. Every day I try to keep up and do my, on good days, 8-minute mile. Bad days, more like 10 or 11 minutes. But yeah, so I try to, exercise. And as it turns out, you don't have to do it really rigorously. It could just be walking. Park your car a few blocks farther away and just light level. There was a wonderful documentary about the blue zone. People who live in the blue zone on Netflix about longevity, the relationship between environment, lifestyle, diet, things like that, and longevity. And one of the things that all these cultures have in common is that there's a lot of just low-level light activity. They're always kind of walking, or they're always getting up and sitting down and they get up again, or they're gardening. And so that would be my another component of my answer is that. I will offer one more. I'm sorry to go long on this.
Good.
Because
Go.
Okay, my last one is, and I think that this one is the keys to the kingdom, which is you can just decide that something is not going to bother you. And I know this sounds simple, but how do I say this without sounding crazy?
Too late. So you
Too
might
late.
as well go for it now.
It's this concept. I read this book called The Lathe of Heaven by Roger Zelazny. Kirsten, do you know this book? Okay, you have to be kind of a sci-fi geek, and I kind of thought you were. And but it plays with this notion of what is reality and what is in your mind, and how those things are kind of more interlinked than you think. And in so much of the subjectivity of what we think about and what we see and what we experience, who is to say that you have no power to define something as good versus bad, right? I could define this, be very difficult for me to, but I could define it as bad. It's bad because I'm not doing something else. But it's actually really good because what an amazing opportunity it is to engage with all of you and to sit here for this amount of time with my good friend Alicia. So this concept that you can decide whether you define something as good or bad. My mom has dementia. I have to take care of her. No, I get to take care of her, right? And I see her more now, a couple of times a week, than I ever did when she was not ill. And so I think there's nothing I can do about it. I can't change the fact that she's got dementia, but I can change how I look at it. So I don't know what you want to call that, but anyway.
Profound.
Profound? Oh, okay, all right, cool. Thanks for the question.
That's almost a great one to end on, but I have one more for you before we wrap up, which is, like I said earlier, sometimes it's not the message, but the messenger. So when we talk about, civic engagement, civil discourse, and why it's important to be engaged or to re-engage with people wherever you are in your life. And for those that are in the spaces that you are in or have been in, so tech, entrepreneurship, people doing things off on their own, why is it important for them to be engaged? For example, the fact that there's an election coming up, and CityClub is going to be hosting 4 of those debates in their districts. And the reason why we chose to do that extra piece of doing it in the districts, because we wanted to make sure that people in those communities could come and hear their future representative and be able to hear from them directly instead of having to travel across town to try to make it happen. So what can you say to your peers and those who listen to you about why it's important for them to be involved in the electoral process, or making sure that they actually vote or get registered to vote? Why is it important for them, even if they feel like they're not politically inclined, to still be a part of that process, especially now knowing that there's going to be at least 4 new people that are going to be leading their city next year?
Yeah. You bet. And here's my answer. We get to live in still one of the best countries in the world across so many ways that you can measure it in terms of opportunity. This is the only country that is as socially and economically mobile. You can go from being a poor kid born to a single mother in a crappy part of Brooklyn to whatever, to being a thought leader, or in half a life cycle. And because this is such a great country, this is the only country, one of the few places that you can do that. We have to continue to love it, to take care of it, to nurture it, and to make sure that it doesn't break. So that is why we need to be engaged civically.
Thank you, Jonathan. Please give him a round of applause. And yourselves, thank you. I have a ton of other questions, but I'm not going to ask them because I want you to engage with our audience. So with that, thank you all so much. As we mentioned before, we do have the 4 debates coming up in October 3rd, 10th, 12th, and 17th for districts 1, 3, 4, and 5, respectively. I remembered that. And we'll be back here in November for our next Civic Cocktail. We're going to be talking about emergency preparedness. And then we're going to have year in review in December. So we have some great things coming up. So please continue to visit us, to see our content online. Please donate as well. We need you. And with that, have a wonderful rest of the evening.